Browns fans, it's that time of the year. It's close to the end of the regular season. And I wanted to make sure this video goes out before the weekend starts because you're going to need to watch a lot of games this weekend to know not just if the Browns are going to make the playoffs, but if they do, who will they play? Will they play at home? What kind of scenarios are available? A lot of stuff is on the table in week 16. The Browns could be out the playoffs by the results of week 16. The Browns could be in the playoffs. The Browns could be on track to get the 2 seed. It gets that crazy. So I'm going to go over all those scenarios with you guys now. But before I do that, I want to give a quick shout out to the patreon.com dog check tier members. And as always, I start with Michael Mateek, Greg Ealer, Seth Harrison, Corporal Nick Lopez, Nick Nasty, Mandela Moore, the only Browns fan in Wisconsin, Batman, Jake Phillips, Rush Shear, Barack Kumar, John Alver, Masayua, Budza Roland, Ethan Rindauer, James Nemo, Mac House, Reeve Hertz, Justin Cole, Philip Wilcoxon, Marie Vivert, Timothy McClure, Keith Anderson, Joshua Still, Sean Barron, Gagos Pisano, Dom Gazzulo, Ian Whitaker, Colin 216, Anthony Latham, Christian, Matt Bond, Dave Strong, Michael Stone, Soul Train, Charles Work, Dan in West Texas, Billy, Michael Holdenack, Josh Bendor, Dylan Hell, Andrew Sedejo, David Maldonado, Chad Gimme, Rex Kaufman, Edrin Hall, Moose Gentry, Patrick F., Austin Z., Mark Burnett II, Andre Griffin, Otis Wolf, IT Rex, Austin Bolin, Jesus Serrano, Joshua Paulus, Chris Falms, Pick Down Browns Backers, Mark Kahn, Max Aldojo, Beerman 069, SSJ Swift, Andrew Hirsch, Feeling Dangerous 113, Dave Mike May, John Cummings, Robert Germain, Cleveland BCI, Anthony O, Bobo Regretti, Stuart Moore, TJ Showman on cue, Mark M, Jaleel Salim Sr., Martha Crusnut, Ryan T, Jonathan Fredericks, CK, Eric Green, Joseph Stevens, and Water Bear Marketing. Thank you so much for supporting this channel through Patreon. I appreciate you guys. Also, it's Christmas Eve, so if you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas Eve. I'll say Merry Christmas tomorrow because there's definitely going to be an upload tomorrow. But without further delay, let's break down some of these playoff scenarios. I'm going to jump to the Batcave and into the playoff simulator on ESPN to see what are these scenarios, what can happen, what can't happen. So let's do it. All right, y'all, let's look at some playoff scenarios. This is going to be very interesting. A lot of different things can happen. So let's go with the first scenario. Let's say pretty much everybody in the playoff race or the wild card race wins out. What happens in that scenario? So we're going to put it here, right here. Miami wins, Cleveland wins, Baltimore wins, and then the Colts beat the Steelers. Let's say the Colts beat the Steelers. Here we go. And then the Miami Dolphins beat a resting Bills team. The Baltimore Ravens would beat the Bengals. The Browns would beat the Steelers. The Titans win against the Texans. Let me go back here. Titans win against, well, let's just go Green Bay here. That's going to not really matter as much. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars lose to the Colts right here. Also, let's make sure Buffalo beats the Patriots. So if the Buffalo Bills beat the Patriots, this is what the playoffs will look like for at least the AFC. The NFC side, I just filled in stuff. I don't know how accurate that stuff's going to be, but this will be the AFC. So you would have these Chiefs, obviously, in almost every scenario. They're going to have the 1 seed. It would be the Bills versus the Dolphins, the Browns versus the Steelers, and the Colts versus Tennessee. Now, if you're a Browns fan, most of you are, the key here is that in most realistic scenarios, you're going to be playing 1 of 2 teams, either the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Tennessee Titans. That's just how it lines up. Even if Baltimore makes it, the odds of you having to play Baltimore in the first round is drastically, it's not really that realistic. Some things have to happen that just would not make that possibility realistic. Now, speaking of Baltimore, how does Baltimore get in the playoffs, right? Because you see, if everybody goes 11-5, Baltimore's on the outside looking in, even though they went 11-5 in this scenario. Well, if Las Vegas wins this game, Baltimore's in, they get to play Buffalo. And let me tell you, you're a Buffalo Bills fan, you do not want that matchup. That is a tough matchup for a 7 seed. Baltimore is playing much better than their 11-5 record says right now, and that's saying a lot. They're probably one of the more dangerous 7 seeds to get in. I don't think Buffalo's not a good team. I think Buffalo's a really good team. I just don't think a lot of teams would like to play the Baltimore Ravens right now, especially the Buffalo Bills, who kind of struggle when it comes to stopping the run. And if you can't stop the run, you're not going to beat Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, especially since they've recommitted to doing that. So that's how the Ravens get in. That's simple, right? For the Browns, it's simple. You win, you're in. For the Ravens, it's not as simple. You need help to get in. All right. So let's say all of this stuff happens, right? Let's say the Dolphins win again, right? And the Browns lose against the Steelers. They go from being the 3rd seed, 12-4, great season, home playoff game, oh my gosh, to look what happens. They're completely out the playoffs. That's the scenario, right? That game right there would be massive, not just for Pittsburgh because the division's on the line, but for Cleveland because their playoffs are on the line, right? It would be just like week 17 in 2018 where the Steelers were watching the Browns because if the Browns won, they would get into the playoffs. But if the Ravens won, then they would. It's kind of the same scenario, but a little bit reversed. This time, both the teams in that game would make the playoffs or one of them won't. So that's the scenario. That's very tough. That's why the NFL puts all these division games at the end of the season for this reason specifically. Now, let's talk about a scenario where some upsets happen, right? Let's say, New England sneaks one out against Buffalo, right? Surprisingly. And then, let's just say that one happens. Look what happens to the bracket. The Browns get to play the Dolphins. The Colts play the Steelers, Tennessee, Buffalo. And again, the Ravens don't make it, but even the Ravens could make it here. Let me see if that happens, and then the Browns would play the Ravens. But you see why this is not likely, right? It would take the Bills losing to a non-playoff Patriots team and the Dolphins. So if the Bills lose out, the Browns win out, they could be the 2nd seed. And if the Raiders win, Baltimore gets in, which also means that, the Browns would play Baltimore 2-7. Not necessarily the matchup you want. You definitely want this one, right? I would love to see Tua Tagovailoa, rookie, playing his first playoff game in Cleveland against his good Browns team. If you're a Browns fan, that's the scenario you want. That's a favorable scenario. I think the Browns can win that game, and I think that's the game you can win the easiest, let's say. Nothing's easy in the playoffs, but I think that's the best matchup for the Browns in that first playoff week. So for week 16, this is probably one of your best case scenarios, not necessarily the best case. It's debatable which one would be, but this is definitely one of them, and that would include the Dolphins winning, the Browns winning. The Ravens can win or lose that game. If they lose, win it, doesn't really matter in this scenario. The Colts winning, you need that to happen. And you need the Bills to be upset by the Patriots. That would open up the 2 seed for you because then you're talking about Miami coming in there. But again, let's be realistic here. If the Bills lose that game against the Patriots, they're not resting anybody for that Week 17 game, and they're probably going to win that one, and that would just put Baltimore in. Buffalo would still have the 2 seed. They get the tiebreaker over Cleveland. You get to play Tennessee, and that's the main scenario for the Browns. Is probably playing Tennessee if you can win out, and you need to win out at this point to kind of have an extra secure fate. Now, you can clinch if you're the Cleveland Browns if this happens, right? Say the Raiders win, you win. Nothing that happens week 17 really affects your playoff status. You'll just be either the 7th seed or you'll be the 5 seed. So you can clinch in that scenario. So let's work with that scenario, right? Let's say you want the Browns to clinch. You want a sure thing going into week 17. Okay, that makes a ton of sense. Say the Bills win here because that just makes more sense. The Bills aren't going to lose to the Patriots here. And then going to week 17, let's say the Dolphins win. Let's say the Ravens win, the Browns win, the Titans win, the Colts win, and this is your playoff bracket, right? But let's say the Titans blow it right here. Okay, now you're playing Baltimore. Or let's say both the Titans and the Browns blow it. Well, now you're playing Indianapolis. So that might actually be a better scenario than if you would have won out. This playoff race this year is so absolutely insane. It is It makes no sense. I think some of the tiebreaker rules are not the greatest tiebreaker rules that have ever been created in mankind history. But, this is what it is. It gets wild once you get to this point here, right? All right, so let's go over a tie scenario, right? Let's say the Miami Dolphins tie. The Browns would win. You're in. So that Saturday game is really the most realistic shot, right? If you're hoping to clinch in Week 16, you need a tie or a win by the Raiders. Baltimore will also need that. So, if you don't want Baltimore in the playoffs, you're playing a riskier game there. But there is a scenario in which that game ties. Week 17, the Dolphins win, and the Ravens are out, right? And the Titans are the 7th seed playing Buffalo. It's a rough matchup. Browns get the 3rd seed, get to play Miami. That's a nice matchup. And the Steelers are the 5th seed playing Indy. It's another rough matchup for Pittsburgh there. So, again, interesting scenarios. A lot of things can happen. Almost all of it hinges on the result of this game, because if you look at this week's matchups in the play with these wild card teams, there's only 2 games that are up for grabs, and one of them is less up for grabs than the other, right? And I mean, the Browns are playing the Jets. In all realness, the Browns should win that game. Now, they could lose that game. That'll blow things wide open, but that's upset territory. That's in the same vein as like the Bills losing to the Patriots this week. It can happen. It shouldn't happen, but it definitely can happen. But if you look at the things that are more than likely not going to happen, again, the Ravens Giants, that's another one that's not probably going to happen. There, where the Giants edge it out against the Ravens. But it's these 2 games. It's the Colts versus Pittsburgh, which I feel like Pittsburgh is not going to be favored to win that game, even at home, after they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals on Monday Night Football. And it's the Miami Dolphins and the Raiders. This game has huge playoff implications no matter how it goes. The Dolphins are going to be playing the Bills, but in this scenario, the Bills would have nothing to really play for because their seeding's not going to change, win or loss, so they're probably going to take a little mini bye in that week. Titans are going to be playing the Houston Texans, who they should beat pretty easily. The Jaguars versus the Colts, who the Colts should beat pretty easily. And again, in this scenario, then this game becomes the most important. If the Raiders lose, this game doesn't matter as much, because both the Browns and the Steelers are going to make the playoffs. Only thing would be on the line is the division, so you don't have to worry about having everything on the line in that game. But again, but if the Raiders lose this one, right, and it's likely that they will, then everything goes to this matchup, which will be on Sunday Night Football, because again, it's not just going to be the Browns division playoff hopes versus the Steelers division hopes. It's also going to be Baltimore's playoff hopes are going to be on the line. A lot of seeding things are going to change. Like, there's no other game on the NFL schedule that will be as consequential in Week 17 if the Browns win and the Dolphins win this weekend, and everybody else in the playoff race wins this weekend, then that game will be it will be the closest to a playoff game that we're going to have. Not because the loser will be eliminated, but because the winner or the loser of that matchup is going to determine so many things, right? It determines whether the Browns have a playoff berth and a home playoff game versus not making the playoffs and the Ravens making it. Because again, if the Browns lose that game, Ravens get in, changes a bunch of seating around, and that's the playoffs. That's it. The Browns would have won 11-5, had this great run, chance at the division. Nope, nothing to show for it at the end of the year. So that would be the most important matchup. But for right now, this game, Miami Dolphins and the Las Vegas Raiders, is the most important matchup of all of this, because if just one simple thing happens, this Raiders win, then the Browns win and everybody else wins, then the Browns' life gets easier, and the Ravens, they're going to have a rougher time, right? Because they're probably going to be hoping for the Browns to lose, and that's how they can get in. And, Browns, Steelers, we'll see where that goes. That's a home game for Cleveland. Not necessarily where you want to have your hopes at, but what other choice do you have? So, again, if you're both Cleveland and Baltimore, you have the same objective to cheer for the Raiders to win this game, because it pretty much gets you into the playoffs, and that's great. Because, again, even if they win, the Browns could lose, they're in, the Ravens are in, the Browns could win, they're in, the Ravens are in. The only way I think the Ravens would miss the playoffs in this scenario is like the Ravens just lost to the Bengals, which I don't see happening. And that's the playoff scenario. That's what's likely to go down. I think what's most likely to happen is what you're seeing here, right? The Raiders beating the Dolphins, the Browns beating the Jets, the Ravens and the Colts both winning out, the Ravens and the Colts both winning out, and the Browns playoff matchup being determined on who wins this Tennessee-Green Bay game, because if Green Bay wins, the Browns will play the Titans. And then if the Titans win, the Browns will play the Steelers in the first round, and depending on who you are, that's more favorable. We'll see how the Browns match up in Week 17, but that's the scenario. Pretty much. No matter how this breaks down, if you're a Browns fan, you probably want the Raiders to win. You want that security. I know it'd be nice to get the Baltimore Ravens out the playoffs. I think they could really upset the Buffalo Bills if they get in. But the good news is you wouldn't see the Baltimore Ravens unless you made the conference championship game in this scenario, because even if they win, they're going to play Kansas City. We'll see if Baltimore can beat Kansas City in the playoffs. And, if they get all the way to that point, you're in the conference championship game, so it's not that much of a bad break. I mean, you get a conference championship home game against the Baltimore Ravens, and, Marcus Peters kind of made that real interesting when it comes to people wanting a return match when it comes to the Browns and the Ravens. Obviously, had the thriller. So those are the scenarios. That is what's likely to happen. There is a scenario where the Browns can get the 2 seed. I think I went over that, but just to reiterate, if the Bills just pull get upset here, and lose to the Patriots, then it'd be 2-7 Browns in the first round against the Ravens. Honestly, I would prefer this one. I would prefer this, either having to play the Titans or the Steelers. Than that, I don't want to play Baltimore in the first round. They have been playing really good football as of late, and I would like to postpone that as long as possible. I still don't know if the Browns, at that point will have enough chemistry with their guys that are coming back, Ronnie Harrison and everybody, to be able to stop the Ravens defense. But if we play them in the conference championship game, then I feel much better about the defense's ability to hold up, because they would have had to held up against a couple of strong teams there. And, I would feel a lot better about the Browns' ability to actually win that game against Baltimore. But those are the scenarios. It gets crazy. We're going to be eyes glued on the television set when it comes to Saturday night football, the Dolphins-Raiders game. Hugely important. Most important game of the week if everything goes as planned, if both New York teams lose as they are projected to, and if the Colts can win as they are projected to. Now, let's see if the Colts lose this game to Pittsburgh. Does that really change that much? No, the Browns still play in Tennessee. They just don't have home playoffs. So, that's the most important game for everybody in the playoff race. For the Browns, I get the Colts and Steelers game is going to be important because you want the division to be alive, but either way, in this scenario, you would be clinched. And even if you don't clinch, let's say the Dolphins do win that game, and you don't clinch in Week 16, well, then this game, it's a double bonus. Either the Steelers lose and you're playing for the division in Week 17 with no security around, you're clinching, or the Steelers win and you clinch and you're in, and you're playing Tennessee. So either way, you're going to end up playing Tennessee. It seems real likely. That game's important for some bonus reasons. I know a lot of Browns fans would like to win the AFC North. I would like to win the AFC North, but the most important game is Miami and the Raiders, so keep your eye on that one. But that's going to be it for this playoff scenario type video. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.